here we go. All right, why don't we call this meeting of the, where are we? The Board of the Harbor Commissioners for July the 21st to order. Mary, would you take the roll?
Frank Kelly.
Here.
Betsy Kramer. Will Anakushin. Corey Bantalan. Eric Friedman. Jim Sloan. Absent. Bill Spicer.
All right, are there any changes to the agenda? Scott?
Mr. Chair, there are no changes to the agenda tonight.
Okay, this is the time when we would take public comment on anything which is not on the agenda. I don't think there will be any. So we go to the first matter, which is the election of the chair and vice chair. Say what, Bet? Go ahead, read the recommendation.
Recommendation that Harbor Commission A nominate and elect the Harbor Commission chairperson and vice chairperson for fiscal year 2011-2012 per the City Charter Section 804 and the Board of Harbor Commission rules adopted September 16, 2010, and B, review and update, if necessary, membership on various Harbor Commission committees.
All right, so at this time we'll open it up for a nomination for chair for the Harbor Commission for the next year. Okay, there are two hands flying out there. Okay, so William.
I would nominate Frank Kelly for chair. I think he has proven his worth.
Will, I'm going to respectfully decline because I've sat in the chair for 5 years running, and this would make it 6 years. So,
Yes, I'd like to nominate Commissioner Kramer for chair.
All right, and I will second that nomination. So we have a nomination and a second. So any discussion before we take the vote? Doing it by the rules. So all those in favor of Commissioner Kramer for chairperson, please say aye. Aye. All those opposed? I don't know how many ayes I heard, but it sounded unanimous. Okay. So I'll go ahead and run the vice chair, and then I'll surrender the throne, okay? So nominations for vice chair.
And I would like to nominate Commissioner Spicer.
Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Okay, so any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? That sounded unanimous. Okay, so Betsy, it's your meeting.
I think we might want his water.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, while Mary gets everybody's names straightened out here, at this point it would probably be appropriate to review the committee assignments as well and see if anyone desires to make a change in the committees.
And I'd like to make a note that there should be 3 people probably on the Budget Committee and not just 2, and that might be, since we're now 7. And, who would like to be on it? I'd like to remain on it. And,
If it pleases the chair, I'd like to remain on the Budget Committee.
one more? Anyone else interested?
Might suggest, since Jim's not here, that we put him on that committee.
Well, as Vice Chair, perhaps you'd like to be on it? Huh?
I'll pass.
I would actually second that motion for Commissioner Sloan.
Okay. So the next one is the chartering, BAP, presently with Commissioners Spicer and myself and Sloan. I don't care whether I'm on it or not, but if anybody else would like to be on it. Everybody? No?
I'll continue my.
Okay. And Sloan will continue his, I guess. The Dredging Committee, Commission, Commissioner Anakuchin
Sure, I'll stand.
and Friedman. Okay.
If it was please the chair, I'd like to go ahead and since we can put 3 on a commission, I'll go on that
Okay.
on that committee.
So that would be Commissioners Friedman, Anakuchin, and Kelly. The Marina One reconstruction, that presently is Anakuchin and me. Does anybody else like to be on it? Will, would you like to remain? Would anyone else like to make a third on it, or,
I wouldn't mind being on that committee.
okay? It takes up a huge amount of time.
Oh, yeah, you'll regret it.
Yeah. Okay, the RFP Selection Committee, Commissioners Spicer, Bantalon, and Sloan presently. Want to stay?
I'll continue.
Okay. And finally, the Waterfront Director Recruitment Subcommittee, Sloan, Kramer, and Bantalon. Yeah? Yeah, okay, all right. Okay, and I noted on that, on the review of the rules, that all committee members can attend meetings. I think we all noted that. And so, that's good. Okay. I'm very new to running a meeting, so I may call upon Commissioner Kelly, who's been excellent, and also on Commissioners Bantalon and Friedman for Brown Act expertise. So, all right. Okay, so I guess our next one would be the approval of the minutes.
I'll make the motion that we approve them.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Our next would be the Director's Report. Mr. Reedman.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, there were 2 council actions since we last convened. The first one was the introduction and adoption of the ordinance approving a 5-year license agreement with a 5-year option with Santa Barbara Water Taxi doing business as Celebration Cruises with a base rent of $2,200 per month for the coastal cruising concession from Stearns Wharf. And this is the culmination of the multi-phase RFP leasing process that we've been engaged in since November, so it's nice to put that one away finally. The second one was Council approved a representative service agreement with our Washington lobbyist firm Carpy, Clay & Smith for liaison and contact services with the U.S. government, particularly for dredging matters, federal budget matters that might affect our Army Corps of Engineer budget to dredge the harbor. Their rate is not to exceed $1,600 per month, and it's a 2-year contract for this fiscal year and next fiscal year. In terms of tentative agenda items for the August meeting, we may have the UCSB sailing facility lease agreement with their recreational programs division and the Brophy's retail store lease agreement. And that concludes the director's report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Friedman. And so the next will be the Business Services Report, and that would be Mr. Henry.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, the Deep Sea Wine Tasting Room, after extensive remodel, the Conway Family Wines received occupancy permits and opened for business on Friday, July the 8th as Conway Deep Sea Tasting Room. Owner Gareth Conway, manager Brandy Rosander, and assistant manager Haley Beckwith were on hand along with several other employees serving flights of their trademark deep sea wine. What is a flight, you might ask? Well, for the novice wine tasting aficionado, a flight is 6 one-ounce servings of wine, starting with a white and then proceeding up to a red wine. And along with their selections, they will soon be offering some delicious cheese plates and hors d'oeuvres from Village Modern Foods. And while you're enjoying your glass of white or red watching the sunset, you may even hear an acoustical guitar in the future softly strumming away. They will be open 7 days a week from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. and Fridays and Saturdays, and from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Sunday through Thursday. You can visit their website for more information, or you may drop by, enjoy the wine, the views, great service, and a very knowledgeable staff. Who knows, you may even go home with a bottle of wine. The second item is the self-pay Luke parking stations. The first two Luke self-pay parking stations went online in the Harbor West lot on Friday, July 1st. So the machines are currently programmed to accept quarters, cash, credit cards, which is Visa, MasterCard, and Discover. The new system was well received by the public. The parking staff was available to assist folks as they were checking in, but after the first, they determined that that was no longer necessary. Approximately 50% of the payments received in the Harbor West lot over the July 4th holiday weekend were made by credit card, and no complaints. As expected, labor involved with the checking of the lot and counting the money in the office has been reduced dramatically. Before, the cash was folded into very small origami designs, and now the bills go into the machines flat, and it's able to count the money in half the time previously required. And that concludes my report.
Sure. I have a couple quick questions. Thanks for your report. The tasting room, is there any grand opening planned? It seemed like that was a soft opening. Is there any public grand opening planned?
They are doing a soft opening for in the next couple of weeks. They'll be doing some advertising shortly to generate more foot traffic. They kind of want to make sure they work out all the bugs first, and everything will go very smoothly, they hope, in the very near future. So as soon as they get out a grand opening notice, we'll email that to all of you.
Thanks.
Any other comments, questions?
I have one additional comment or question on the self-pay parking stations. And I was a big proponent of this, but I just had a couple concerns. I've been running night moves the last couple weeks, and I go down there and the line is pretty long. There's quite a few people standing there. They're all very frustrated. They're trying to get to the race, and I just wonder if it's set up in a way that's conducive to events that handle a lot of traffic at one time. And I noticed that you mentioned over July 4th holiday weekend. How did that work? Were there any problems with lines like that and frustrated folks?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Bantlin, we did not have any reported problems over the 4th of July weekend. We have, I will admit, we've had several issues since that time with these events, with the Pride Festival that was down there the other weekend, and then we did get a complaint from last night's night moves. These events, everybody shows up right at the same time, and so it's very difficult. We even have staff helping people in the Ledbetter lot in the exit as well as the entrance. So we're evaluating how to best address that. There is another machine at the other end of the Harbor West lot that people can use, and I think the complaint that I received last night, the individual did not realize that. We're considering possibly installing a second machine on the west end of the Harbor West lot just for that reason, because there are events in the Ledbetter lot and the night moves and so forth. So we're looking at some different options, a third machine or possibly a machine on event, an additional machine on event nights. So we're working on that. Also last night we had some connectivity issues with the machine that caused a little bit of problem. We're running through that right now. And I think there's also a learning curve of people getting up to it and they haven't seen this before. They're not sure quite how to do it. It seems a little odd to me, though, that we're getting great big lines, because the previous honor fee box was really only user-friendly for one person at a time also. So I think part of this may be a learning curve issue. I mean, two people could conceivably stuff their money into that honor fee box, but it's not altogether different than that. So I think it might be a learning curve issue as well, but we're evaluating that. We're aware of the issue.
I appreciate that you guys are looking at all the options. One other comment I heard, from several folks is that, well, the ticket's only $7, so why stand in line, and pay your $3 when it's only going to be $7? You might not get caught. And so I just wonder if we can look at the bigger picture there and see if that's part of the issue as well.
And thank you, Mr. Henry. I do have one question. I've been asked when the machines will be installed in the other lots. Do you have any sense on that one? I said I didn't think it was going to happen immediately.
Madam Chair, we're looking at the infrastructure needs right now in terms of the fiber optic cable and what infrastructure we're going to have to add. And we're coming up with sort of a master plan, if you will, of where that infrastructure is. And then we'll begin ordering and installing the machines. We hope to install at least 2 to 4 more machines this fiscal year, starting in the Garden Street lot, and then next would be the Palm Park lot. But we need to have a plan for all of the lots and not just do it piecemeal.
Thank you very much.
Question, Madam Chair. Following up to Commissioner Banton's comment, can you verify is the ticket for not paying only $7?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Friedman, it's a collection envelope, it's not a ticket, and so it is for the amount of the parking fee. If it's not paid within 10 days' time, then it does become a ticket. A $20 surcharge is added to it.
Thank you. That's all I need.
The next will be the Facilities Management Report. And Mr. Triberg.
Good evening, Madam Chair and Commissioners. Tonight I'm going to talk a little bit about minor capital improvements in the Facilities Division. The waterfront has performance objectives for every division, and one of the most challenging performance objectives we have at facilities are minor capital improvements. And these are small improvements, not to be confused with large improvements like the Marina One replacement project or replacing the breakwater. At the beginning of the fiscal year, every year we identify projects throughout the waterfront, Stearns Wharf, and in the parking lots. And in fiscal year 2011, we identified 32 projects. We completed 24 of those projects for a success rate of 75%, which unfortunately is a couple projects shy of our objective of 80%. This is a very challenging objective for us, and it's a good measure of our productivity. And so we set the bar pretty high, and most of the time we make it, and sometimes we don't. There was 4 key projects in this fourth quarter that I'm going to talk a little bit about this evening. In fiscal year 2010, with the Council's adoption of the budget, we assumed responsibility for repair and maintenance of the restroom over by Ledbetter Beach near the Shoreline Cafe. The restroom was in some kind of marginal shape, and we received some complaints, so decided to move forward with a relatively small project at the time, including painting the interior and adding new fixtures and a little bit of work on the roof. Unfortunately, as we peeled the roof open, we identified some serious structural damage due to rot of the wood and chronic leaks. So we stripped the entire roof off and replaced all the structural members, replaced the skylights, and added a whole new roof. We recoated the interior with an epoxy-based paint to make it much more durable and replaced all the fixtures. The cost of the project was considerably higher than we originally anticipated at about $70,000, but the end result was a aesthetically pleasing and much more structurally sound facility that's going to serve tens of thousands of people every year, much, much better than the previous restroom did. On the theme of restrooms, over at Marina 3, which is our Americans with Disabilities Act compliant marina, we have a restroom that's part of that facility and also needs to be compliant with the Americans with Disabilities Act, ADA. All the restrooms along the north side of the harbor were built in the 1960s, and this particular marina had some upgrades in the 1980s when the ADA, when the Act came out and was approved. It no longer meted standards. We did an evaluation in 2008, and there were quite a few recommendations for improving it to make the overall facility compliant. The new restrooms look like this, quite a bit of a change. They are up to code. The tile pattern, which is a significant aesthetic feature, matches many of the downtown public restrooms, so it's very consistent with some of the restrooms you see at the Garden Lot and downtown and State Street, and it's just a significant improvement. There was all new fixtures. The project was constructed by a company called R.W. Smith, which is a very reputable firm. It was more expensive than we anticipated, but the low bid was just a little bit lower than another bid by another very reputable contractor, so we felt confident that we couldn't go out to rebid this or change it and really save a lot of money. It was a complete remodel, completely demolished the interior and rebuilt it all back up to meet code. So it's a significant improvement and a significant project. And it will set a precedent for future upgrades for Marina 2 and 4 restrooms as well, as we make those restrooms as current as we possibly can. We also have a couple of dock projects that we recently completed, and one is the Marina 3B NTI. Now, Marina 3, being our Americans with Disabilities Act compliant marina, has 11 designated slips as required. The end tie at Marina 3 is our largest ADA compliant slip, and it actually is a transient slip but serves the entire harbor. I think you have another button here. It's available to all vessels, which is a term called equivalent facilitation. So everybody in the harbor, even with a larger slip and a transient vessel, can come in and offload and load disabled individuals, and they can use the switchback gangway up at the top so they can get in and out of the harbor at any tide. This was a nice project in that, as a transient slip, it was eligible for what's called a boating infrastructure grant administered by the Department of Boating and Waterways. And we received $50,000 to replace this slip. We widened it from 4 feet to 8 feet. The total cost was about $31,000. So it's a very nice upgrade to the Marina 3, and it didn't cost us anything. So we really enjoy it, and the folks out there really appreciate the upgrade. And it'll probably set a precedent for all of the end ties on Marinas 2 through 4. Scott and I have been talking a little bit about incrementally improving all of those because they're pretty old and they're pretty narrow. And the final project this evening is our accommodation dock. It's the real workhorse of the harbor. Tens of thousands of vessels tie up there every year. It's about 20 years old, and at about 6 feet wide was really starting to show its age. If anybody's ever been down at the Harbor and Seafood Festival when they were lining up to get on the Adventure Cat, the whole dock tips over rather extremely and makes everybody a bit nervous. So we've seen that year after year and decided an upgrade was appropriate. The new dock looks like this. We've widened the outer section from 6 feet to 8 feet. We've extended it by 15 feet and added a pile to it. The total cost of the project was about $80,000. It's a very significant upgrade, and it's a facility it's really quite strong. In a storm, we could tie up large vessels there, which we've never been able to in the past. And it's the beginning of another upgrade for the rest of the accommodation dock. So it's another significant upgrade, and these are just demonstrations of minor capital improvements that we do throughout the harbor, throughout the year. We're working on our FY 2012 plan, and I might come back at the end of next year and report on what we completed, and hopefully we'll meet our objective of 80% completion. And this concludes my report this evening. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you very much for the report. Any questions from commissioners? I guess that's that. You're excellent. Thank you. Next item is the Harbor Operations Report. Mr. Conman.
Madam Chair, members of the Commission, good evening. It's been a couple months since we met, so I wanted to sort of leapfrog back and update you on a couple of events. I'll make it brief. The nautical swap meet went fine. It was a cold and chilly, pretty cold day, and we had a good turnout from the community, but unfortunately we only had 32 vendors. We're used to having maybe 38, 40, so being 10 to 15% off, Brian Slagle, our administrative analyst, and I, who helps coordinate these events with me, he and I are going to put our heads together and reassess our advertising strategies for this event because we believe it's an important one, actually a cornerstone of what we do is enabling boaters to access the gear they need to go boating. We'll come back to you next year, hopefully with better numbers in terms of the number of vendors. We shoot for about 40, so we'll pay a lot of attention to that. All the usual stuff was there, and it went fast. I had to encourage folks to wait for the 8 o'clock buzzer. So that's how I spent 7 o'clock to 8 o'clock mostly, was keeping them off the piles of goodies. But so that part of it was great. It was great stuff, and a lot of turnout from the community. We'd just like to get more vendors, and I think we can, with a little bit of strategizing, we can do that. July 4th was the contrary on weather. We had a unusual day. Unlike the days when we get the marine layer, we had warm, brilliant sunshine from wire to wire on July 4th, which brought tens of thousands of people to the waterfront. It was a beautiful show. It was calm and peaceful. It was water sports at its best. Everybody enjoying stand-up paddling and kayaks and what have you. We had very few law enforcement contacts in the field that day. The only unfortunate thing is we did have a couple of significant accidents to individuals. One young lad that jumped off the parapet wall onto the sand up between the between the yacht club and the ocean, and broke his leg. And we also had a young individual that fell off his bike, had a pretty severe injury on Stearns Wharf. So despite that, those setbacks and transports to the hospital, it was a very, very successful event for the waterfront and for the community. We heard a lot of compliments on it from folks streaming out of the marinas. In fact, I meant to compliment Carl on this. In the past years, I have one of the last shifts. I sort of stand watch with a couple of officers and ensure people dump any alcohol that they've got, beers and what have you, and wine, inside the marinas before they come out, so they're not, violating the open container laws. And in the past, before the headwalk to Marina One was changed, you could literally see it rising as people were leaving, the thousands of people, and it doesn't budge now. It's one solid piece of work. So I'm meaning to tell you that. We had an interesting event on July 10th. The 15 suspected illegal aliens at Santa Cruz Island were taken off by the U.S. Coast Guard. You may have read about it. What you probably didn't read about was Harbor Patrol's role in this. It was really a support role. What we did was we escorted the individuals up to the Marine Center classroom, where they were fed and granola bars mostly, and given as much water as they could drink, and really assessed in a triage sort of fashion to see who needed transport to the hospital. A few of them did, because of a 22-hour Ponga ride from Mexico was pretty brutal on them, and they were some of them were banged up pretty badly. But other than that, we were happy to assist, and in fact, I'm proud to tell you that we actually got a letter of commendation from the U.S. Coast Guard Blackfin's commanding officer, who said that was really proud of the way we worked with them, owing to the safe detention with the suspects, the accommodation and attention to their medical needs, which ranged, as I said, from bruised and battered, and I believe there was one broken bone, to considerable dehydration and what have you. And one of the most important things, and I'm very proud of the patrol and the letter that recognized this, is they kept it from becoming a spectacle. Few people gathered on the city pier to watch, but Brophy Brothers was jam-packed, and there were a lot of people at the harbor, and we managed to accomplish this in a sort of challenging maneuver with very little attention to it, and kept it from becoming a spectacle. And about 4 to 6 hours after they were arrived in Santa Barbara, the Customs, the Border Patrol folks arrived from San Clemente and transported them back south. On the copper paint front, I know Commissioner Friedman especially, and the Commission in general, has been interested in updates on Senate Bill 623, and that bill has migrated from the Senate to the Assembly, sort of migrated across the hall. It went through the Senate subcommittee reviews. It passed a vote on the subcommittee on the floor of the Senate, and is now headed to the Assembly side of the legislature, where it will have the Appropriations Committee of the Assembly review it in sometime in August, before there's a floor vote and possibly being passed on to the governor. There have been some tweaks and some sort of relatively complex amendments to the bill since we last addressed it and spoke to you. The easy of which and most important of which to understand is, and I'm going to read it because I don't want to miss this at all, and that is the bill now requires that the use of what is called low leach rate copper anti-fouling paints, and has tasked the Department of Pesticide Regulations with establishing those thresholds and identifying by January of 2014 which paints meet the standard. So the load has really been shifted to the Department of Pesticide Regulation, where they're going to have to determine what thresholds, what content of copper in the paints will be allowable for putting on the bottom of recreational vessels in California. And there is language, there's timeline language in there. If it's not accomplished by a certain date, the copper will be banned completely. There are mixed reviews on this. Some boating organizations still think it's draconian. Others think it's appropriate. It has a ways to go. It could get amended again. And, of course, we'll see what the Appropriations Committee says relative to its affordability. But that's where we're at on that. And finally, it's my pleasure to inform you that after 5 years of our original Clean Marina certification through California Clean Marinas program, we had a recertification inspection in late June, and the program is now administered by Clean Marinas, Inc., and they It's a regional program. It's an industry-sponsored program. It includes Nevada and Arizona and California. And we were re-inspected, and we got the exact same score as we did 5 years ago at 96%. And just so you know exactly what that entails, I attached a copy of the score sheet so you can see the kind of bar we had to meet. We put a lot of effort into this. As you know, we're very much dedicated to the Clean Marina program and all its elements. And so according to the individual who scored us, we comparably relative to other marinas, we did pretty well. And finally, and actually this is sort of going back, I apologize for that. Finally, I've also attached a copy of the city's legislative platform. Commissioner Friedman had asked us to do that at our last commission hearing, and it details basically what the city's platform is on various legislative and regulatory issues, the purpose of which being if a letter, a piece of correspondence needs to be sent or something of that nature, that management staff or an executive or a department head, or in most cases the mayor, these letters are crafted for the mayor's signature. All this can be accomplished without going to city council and working our way through the debate at the dais and what have you. The debate's been had, it's all been vetted, it's all in the legislative platform, and if a position or a letter coming from city staff or the mayor is in concert or is consistent with the legislative platform, then it's good to go. The our city administrator's office we just inform them that the letter's been sent along with our when we send it uptown for the mayor to send it off. And Madam Chair, that would conclude my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you for that report. And I just want to say great job on the Clean Marina program. It's a very important program, and thank you to all staff for excelling on that. 96% is great. In regards to copper-based paints, my question is, it's in the report it was noted that there was an amendment that would ban all anti-fouling paints, not just copper. Is that still the case? And then also, what would the implications be if the copper-based paints were completely banned? Are there alternatives? And how would that possibly, if we can get an estimate, how it would affect the harbor? I know that in previous reports there's been tests that are being conducted on other types of anti-fouling paints. I know we're working with Channel Keeper, and we're looking at those. But if those aren't ready yet, what are the implications for our harbor users?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Friedman, an entirely fair question, and I think what part of the intention of this bill, as I understand it, is to put the very pressure that you just articulated onto the manufacturers of the paints, so that we aren't forced into a situation where we have to have a solution that is non anti-fouling paint. Period. There are paints that are being researched as we speak, paints that are biocidal paints that have no metals in them. There are alternatives to copper that are still metallic. We have zinc-based paint on one of our patrol boats. So I think the short answer is this really lights a fire under the paint manufacturers to be able to come up with a paint that either meets the low leach rates or is absent of copper entirely. Sure.
Any other questions? Comments? Thank you very much, Mr. Kronman, and congratulations on the Clean Marina and doing so well. I agree with Commissioner Friedman. It's tremendously important, and it's something for the city to be really proud of. Thank you
very much. And just so you know, I had a whole lot of help on it.
I'm sure.
Okay.
Yeah, nothing happens all by one.
No, the facilities manager is my partner in this, and but thank you very much. Everybody had a hand in it.
Thank you. And on to new business. And
Special event camping permit, catamaran regatta, Recommendation that Harbor Commission A review and consider a request for a special permit to allow event participant camping in the Harbor West parking lot from 5 p.m. Friday, August 19th until 5 p.m. Sunday, August 21st, during the 2011 Wine and Roses Charity Regatta. And B, approve event chairman Steve Leo's request for participant camping for the upcoming sailing events as allowed per Santa Barbara Municipal Code Section 1516090.
What's the pleasure of the,
Madam Chair, Commissioners,
sorry.
the Wine and Roses Regatta has been held at Ledbetter since 1996. It's been a very popular and successful event once Steve Leo took over organization of the event, I believe in about 1998. It's sponsored by the Santa Barbara Yacht Club and the California Hobie Fleet. The racing boats and their equipment are expensive and could potentially be vulnerable to vandalism or theft, so each year the event organizers request permission to stay overnight in the parking lot, the Harbor West parking lot, to be near their property and safeguard their property. And the Harbor Commission does have the authority under the municipal code to grant this temporary camping permit within its jurisdiction. In past years, the event has used the entire Harbor West parking lot, but the last couple of years, they've requested just to use half of it, and that's the case this year. Half of the Harbor West lot, approximately 100 spaces for the regular price of $7 per space per day. So $700, $1,400 approximately for the weekend. And that's for half of the lot, so we'll still be able to get revenue out of the other half of the lot. The catamaran races are an ocean-dependent use, and staff supports the use of the waterfront facilities and the special event camping permit for this use. And the Commission has approved the special event camping permit for this event since 1998. I'd be happy to answer any questions on this.
Commissioner Kelly?
Yeah. Scott, on the half that they want to use, is it like the west end or the east end, or are they going to use the seaward side, and how are we going to divide the half?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Kelly, the way we've done it in the past year when they've done this half lot request is they prefer to use the eastern half of the Harbor West lot, and that's primarily due to, as you get further west, you encounter the swim buoys in front of Ledbetter. So the swim buoys stop, and that's their window to get out and race back and forth without interfering with the swim buoy area.
Okay.
And we've been able to manage it effectively.
And do we provide additional trash receptacles since they're there, or do the ones we have, do they suffice?
I'm not exactly sure on that. I believe Parks and Recreation also has a hand in granting this event, and they usually require that sort of extra restrooms and portable restrooms and trash receptacles. But
Okay.
trash and litter have not been a problem with this event for us.
Okay, thank you so much.
Bantalan?
I'll make a motion to approve the permit.
Second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? You are. Motion is unanimous.
5-year lease agreement with Seacoast of Santa Barbara. Recommendation that Harbor Commission recommend council approve a 5-year lease agreement with one 5-year option with Seacoast of Santa Barbara, Inc. for a 562 square foot office at 125 Harbor Way at a base rent of $1,817 per month, subject to annual cost of living increases.
Madam Chair, we're going to have Waterfront Property Management Specialist Patrick Henry present this item.
Madam Chair, Commissioners, Seacoast of Santa Barbara has operated a yacht brokerage in the Santa Barbara Harbor under several ownership configurations since 1971. Currently, the lease expired in February of 2011, and the corporation is currently owned by Brian Coriat and Vicki Van Hook. The basic lease terms of the proposed lease are as follows. 5-year term with one 5-year option to add. Base rent of $1,817 per month, with a utility surcharge of 15 cents per square foot per month. The percentage rent is broken out, 1.05% for sales of new and used boats, outboard motors, and sea drives, 4.2% for sales of marine hardware, equipment, and sales, 10.5% for commissions, fees from boat brokerage activities, and marine insurance commissions, marine maintenance services, and any other transactions that are not specified above. Annual rent adjustment will be the cost of living increases based on the CPI. The permitted use is the office space for full-service yacht sales and brokerage business, power and sailboat instruction, and boat leases for periods greater than 1 month. And since the lease is with the corporation, Brian Coriat has signed the city's standard form for the personal guarantee, and there have been no changes to the business terms of the lease. The lease term, format, and content is similar to leases with the Channel Ray Yacht Sales and Sunset Kid Yacht Sales. A copy of the lease is available for review at the Waterfront Administration Office.
Thank you, Mr. Henry. Any commission questions, comments?
I'll make a motion that we approve the lease.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carried.
5-year lease with Santa Barbara Sailing Center. Recommendation that Harbor Commission review and recommend to City Council approval of a 5-year lease with 2 5-year options with Skip Abed doing business at Santa Barbara Sailing Center for the boat rental and sailing instruction facility at 303 West Cabrillo Boulevard, adjacent to the harbor launch ramp.
There is a request to speak. Do you want to speak at this point, Mr. Abbott? Or do... Thank you.
Thank you. Is this on? Can you hear me?
Betsy, I think you need to turn this mic on. It's the red
Oh.
button in front of you. Push it forward.
All right.
Hello?
Thank you.
Okay. Madam Chair, Commissioners, thank you. I just wanted to come up and, my name's Skip Abed, owner of the Santa Barbara Sailing Center, and it's been a wonderful 11 years. Boats are expensive, but fun. I've been enjoying this job a lot. I actually turned down a job at the World Trade Center and came out to California, and I'm happy I did that. So, anyways, I also wanted to thank Scott Reedman and his staff. The Waterfront has been a great partner in business to work with. We all have our challenging times when we are in business with anybody, but it's been a wonderful partnership, so I wanted to thank you on that. And I'm just really proud of what I've done with the Sailing Center over the last 11 years. It's been a lot of help with my family as well. I grew the business quite a bit, put in over $1.2 million worth of improvements, boats into the Sailing Center. We now have over 60 boats and what have you, kayaks, and that you can actually take out and enjoy the ocean all the way from 50 feet that sleeps 12 people all the way down to our pedal boats and kayaks and so on and so forth. Our sailing school, I'm very excited about this. The American Sailing Association recognized us 2 years in a row for Sailing School of the Year. A couple of our instructors also received Instructor of the Year as well. So we have an outstanding school, one of the top schools on the West Coast. Do any boating out here, and you'll know this is a great place to learn to sail. We also get a lot of children out in the water, after-school programs and kids camps as well, and kayaking and sailing, and that's been wonderful as well. Taking over the business and starting the business, we started with simple things like a cash register and grew from there. We're the only business here in the harbor right now that can do online ticket sales for items. We've packaged with a number of the hotel properties where they can go online, book someone to go out on the Double Dolphin, and do that all online and receive their cut and so on that way. And it's taking it to the next level with the Sailing Center. We've improved on our kayaking facility. The kayak dock, we've invested close to $50,000 and have one of the best launching facilities, outdoor shower, and ability to get people in and out of the kayaks easily. We do a punch card system, and we have people come down and rent the kayaks and take out the kayaks regularly. The other day, I had a woman come down on a wheelchair. She kayaks regularly, and it's so much easier from the way we had it before, where we were, kind of just launching them from the dock, and now we have a ramp to actually launch them in the kayak into the water and then retrieve them back as well. So she's able to come down in her wheelchair, hop in the kayak, and then go on out and before we were kind of helping people by almost giving them a wedgie and pulling them up, and I'm like, there's got to be a better way. So I'm always looking for improvements down there, remodel the offices, and it really looks great. I highly encourage you to come down and visit, and so much more. But I want to thank you and thank Scott and his staff for all their support over the years, Mick and Carl and Pat and so on. So thank you.
Madam Chair, I guess it's my turn to give the report, although I think Skip covered it pretty well. Just in terms of background, the Abed family assumed the Santa Barbara Sailing Center lease through an assignment process in May of 2000, and Skip has managed all aspects of the operation since that time. This lease expired in December of 2009, and the business has operated on a holdover status with the department's approval since that time. It's been a long way getting there between workload, and we did have some back and forth in our lease negotiations, but eventually reached a mutually agreeable solution. The rent at the Sailing Center is allocated seasonally to allow for a lower base rent in the winter and a higher base rent in the summer to compensate, similar to other waterfront lessees we've been telling you about, Sea Landing and most all of our restaurants now. Basic terms of the lease are 5-year initial term with 2 5-year options to extend for a total of 15 years. Base rent remains unchanged, $59,598 per year, subject to annual CPI increase. And the Sailing Center has several percentage rent categories for different types of services provided, ranging from 1% to 15%. The 15% of gross sales from the Double Dolphin, for example, 10% of gross receipts from boat rentals and sailing club memberships, and 5% of gross receipts from the Channel Cat luxury vessel. The permitted uses, actually more correctly the required services at Santa Barbara Sailing Center, are the operation of a sailing school accredited by the American Sailing Association, the ASA as Skip referred to, and also required to operate a boat rental facility, including the rental of sailboats, power boats, and personal watercraft. The Sailing Center is also permitted to operate the larger Coast Guard inspected coastal cruise vessels, Double Dolphin and Channel Cat. And I won't repeat all that Skip said, but I will agree he's done an admirable job of managing and upgrading the Sailing Center over the past 11 years. It's nothing like it was operated 12 years ago. And he has invested over $1 million in the facility improvements and vessel inventory. And the business office, clubhouse, and meeting room have all been remodeled, and I would encourage you to go down there. Its organizational skills are quite remarkable. So that concludes my report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions from the commissioners? Or comments?
I'll make a motion that we approve the lease.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Or anyone opposed? You have a lease. Thank you. And boy, here we go, birds. Oh, the last item of the staff commission report, comments?
Madam Chair, I just would bring to the attention of the Commission that the August meeting, the status of the August meeting is tentative at this point. I mentioned the 2 leases with the UCSB Department of Recreation. That is not quite completed yet. We believe we're very close, but we don't have ink on paper yet. And the same is true with the store lease for Brophy's. So if we don't get that in time, it would be a pretty light agenda. So there's a possibility that meeting might be canceled. Additionally, if the commissioners have vacations planned during that time, please let Mary know, and we'll do our best to get these items on the agenda. But I just wanted to give you that heads up.
And I'd like to make a comment, which I'm sure all of the commissioners would agree with if they knew the details as I do. The Harbor Patrol has been outstanding in terms of rescuing the seabirds that have been injured. They've been, I'm not sure what the count is at this point, of probably 10 or so a week, the paper said, but I've picked up several since. It's been, the situation on Stearns Wharf has been difficult, but the Harbor Patrol's been great. So any thoughts as to how, anyone has any thoughts about what can be done, please contact Mr. Cronman or Mr. Reedman or the Santa Barbara Wildlife Care Network. But as I say, the Harbor Patrol is fantastic. So thank you very much.
Thank you. We're very proud of them as well.
So is anything else? I guess
One comment?
Sure.
I just wanted to thank Commissioner Kelly for his years as the chair, and well done.
Thank you.
And I'll second that. So, motion?
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All in favor?
Aye.
We are adjourned.